I'm sure you've heard the news. Tulsi Gabbard is throwing around the term seditious conspiracy like it's confetti at a political parade. It's the kind of phrase that instantly grabs attention, conjuring up images of shadowy backroom deals, cloak and dagger plots, and high-stakes drama straight out of a political thriller. But what's really going on here? Why is this phrase suddenly everywhere, and what does it actually mean in the context of American politics today? Let's break it down, because this story is a lot more complicated than the headlines make it seem. Allegations are flying, headlines are screaming, and everyone's got an opinion. The media is in a frenzy, with every network and news site scrambling to cover the latest twist. Social media is ablaze with hot takes, memes, and conspiracy theories. It's the kind of political moment that feels both chaotic and strangely familiar, another chapter in the never-ending saga of American intrigue. But is there real fire, or just a lot of political smoke? Are we witnessing the unraveling of a genuine plot, or is this just another case of politicians using loaded language to score points and rile up their base? The line between fact and fiction can get pretty blurry, especially when the stakes are this high and the rhetoric is this heated. Okay, quick recap. Tulsi Gabbard, who's now serving as Trump's Director of National Intelligence, just made a bombshell move. She declassified over 100 pages of Obama-era documents, dropping them into the public arena with the promise that they contain explosive revelations. The documents, she claims, are the smoking gun that will finally expose what she calls a years-long effort by top officials to undermine the Trump presidency from the very beginning. She claims these files prove officials tried to stage a years-long coup against Trump, manufacturing the whole Russia scandal. Sounds wild, right? According to Gabbard, these aren't just bureaucratic squabbles or partisan disagreements. She's talking about a coordinated, deliberate attempt to subvert the will of the voters and remove a sitting president through deception and manipulation. It's a narrative that, if true, would shake the foundations of American democracy. Gabbard isn't just making noise for the cameras, she's demanding full-scale criminal investigations, calling for the Department of Justice to look into what she describes as a textbook case of seditious conspiracy. She's not mincing words. She wants people held accountable, and she's using one of the most serious charges in the federal criminal code to make her point. She's demanding criminal investigations, using the term seditious conspiracy. This isn't just a political spat or a war of words on cable news. Seditious conspiracy is a charge that carries real weight, with the potential for serious legal consequences. It's a term that's been used in some of the most dramatic moments in American history, from Civil War-era plots to more recent cases involving extremist groups. That's not just spicy political lingo. That's a legit federal crime involving attempts to overthrow the government by force. The law is clear. Seditious conspiracy means two or more people conspiring to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or to oppose by force its authority. It's a charge that's rarely used, and for good reason. The bar for proving it is incredibly high. But here's where it gets messy. Legal experts are already weighing in, and most of them are calling her evidence-thin gruel. They point out that while the documents are certainly interesting, they don't come close to meeting the standard required for a seditious conspiracy charge. There's a big difference between bureaucratic infighting or political maneuvering and an actual plot to overthrow the government. Translation: lots of drama, not a lot of proof. The headlines might be sensational, but when you dig into the details, the case starts to look a lot less like a blockbuster and a lot more like a rerun of old political battles. The evidence so far is more suggestive than conclusive, raising questions, but not providing the kind of hard proof that would stand up in court. Most of her so-called smoking guns are emails, meeting notes, and some not-so-secret memos. These are the kinds of documents that, while potentially embarrassing or politically damaging, don't necessarily prove a criminal conspiracy. In fact, many of these materials have already been reviewed by investigators, journalists, and congressional committees over the past several years. Critics say it's all been combed over by multiple investigations: Mueller, Durham, bipartisan Senate reviews. Each of these investigations spent months, sometimes years, poring over the same evidence, interviewing witnesses, and trying to get to the bottom of what really happened. And while they uncovered plenty of questionable behavior and political gamesmanship, none of them found evidence of a coordinated coup or a seditious conspiracy. All found Russia tried to help Trump, but no deep state coup. The consensus among these investigations was that Russia did, in fact, attempt to interfere in the 2016 election, largely to benefit Trump. But the idea of a shadowy cabal within the US government orchestrating a coup, that's a bridge too far, according to the official findings. Even the CIA, which has faced its own share of criticism and controversy, admits that some of the intelligence from 2016 may have been rushed or incomplete. But the basic conclusion that Russia interfered and that there was no grand conspiracy to overthrow Trump remains unchanged. The intelligence community, for all its flaws, has stood by its assessment even as the political debate rages on. The reality is, the story is far more nuanced than the headlines suggest. Intelligence work is messy, and the process of gathering, analyzing, and acting on information is rarely as clear-cut as politicians or pundits would have you believe. There are always gray areas, competing interpretations, and the ever-present risk of confirmation bias, seeing what you want to see rather than what's actually there. Meanwhile, Gabbard's supporters say she's a truth-teller. Her critics think she's starring in her own political reality show. To her fans, she's a fearless whistleblower, unafraid to take on the establishment and expose corruption at the highest levels. To her detractors, she's a provocateur, using sensational claims to grab headlines and advance her own political ambitions. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in between. The legal definition of seditious conspiracy is clear, but applying it to real-world situations is anything but simple. Prosecutors have to prove not just intent, but actual steps taken to use force against the government. That's a tall order, and it's why so few cases ever make it to court, let alone result in convictions. Bottom line, tossing around seditious conspiracy amps up the drama, but the legal bar is sky high. It's one thing to make accusations in the court of public opinion, it's another to prove them in a court of law. The difference between political theater and criminal conspiracy is vast, and the consequences of blurring that line can be profound. Is Gabbard a whistleblower, or just blowing smoke? That's the question at the heart of this controversy. Is she shining a light on real abuses of power, or is she fanning the flames of division for her own gain? The answer depends on who you ask, and perhaps on what you're willing to believe. Hit like, subscribe, and sound off in the comments, because in politics, the plot always thickens. And as this story continues to unfold, one thing's for sure. The search for truth in American politics is as complicated and as contentious as ever. Whether you see Gabbard as a hero, a villain, or something in between, the debate over seditious conspiracy is a reminder of just how high the stakes can get when politics, law, and national security collide. So stay tuned, keep questioning, and remember, sometimes the loudest headlines hide the most important details.